and it's time for women.
Yes.
And women, we can do whatever we want.
Exactly.
Sheinbaum sorprendió al público al dar una plática en inglés con una pronunciación impresionante, pero lo que más llamó la atención fue cómo pronunció Nobel Prize como Nobeleishion, desatando reacciones inesperadas entre los asistentes y en redes sociales, cómo se ganó la admiración y al mismo tiempo el debate en torno a su participación. Comenta la palabra inglés. Si a ti te sorprendió la pronunciación de nuestra presidenta, no olvides suscribirte y darle a like.
Well, first of all, my background is physics. I studied physics, then energy engineering for my master and my PhD. And when I was 15 years old, that was the first time that when I was in high school, the first time that I get involved in student mobilization, the student movement, because many people couldn't get into the high school. So I was in, but I was, in solidarity with those that couldn't have the possibility of studying. And then, I get involved in social politics. And it was very important for us in 1988 when the Ingeniero Cárdenas was candidate for presidency. And it was very important for us because we came from a student movement and we decided, I said us because our generation, and we decided to go to Ingeniero Cárdenas. And later on, I went to the US to study my PhD, and then I returned and I was part of the university. But I was involved from my parents that they were involved in the 1968 student movement. So I was involved in politics, but my main occupation was to be a mother and to be in the university. And in 2000, President López Obrador, when he was chief of government of Mexico City, he invited me to be the Minister of Environment. And I get involved, and later on in 2006 with the electoral fraud, I was, with López Obrador, even though I returned to university, I was, with him in all the movement that finally get into the burn of Morena.
Great. Well, we know that PRI and PAN really maintained a stranglehold over Mexican politics since 1946. In 2016, Morena was founded to be an alternative to this. And in 2018, of course, Morena achieved a historic electoral victory with the election of Andrés Manuel López Obrador. What does this mean for the course of Mexican politics?
In 2016, when Morena was created, nobody wanted to be in Morena because it was a new party. And in Mexico, you have to win a certain percentage of the votes to be an official party. And it was very difficult because just few people wanted to be in Morena. And the decision to get away from PRD, the party that we were, is that, we thought at that time that there was no possibility in their party that was getting very close to the official party. So we decided to create. I said we decided because there were a lot of assemblies in all the country that decided to create this party. And from 2016 to 2022, it's 7 years, and now we have the presidency, 22 governors of 32, the majority in the Congress, the majority in the Senate, and a lot of municipal presidentials. Why? It's because people want to change. And it's a change from economic model. We, neoliberalism now is in the past. And we have now a government that thinks in the majority, thinks in Mexican people rather than thinks in a privileged group. So, and right now we have the majority, and that's because people are, happy. Even though a lot of media is against the president and against Morena, people wants this change and wants this fourth transformation, as we call it, to continue.
So one thing that confirms some of what you're saying is the fact that you're currently leading all major voter intention polls for the 2024 presidential election. What do you think has led to this support?
Okay, first of all, I think it's that I have been in the movement always. I've been near President López Obrador, always since 2023 years. And at some point, people remember that I was, in the Adelitas movement that we have in 2008 against the privatization of oil, of the Mexican oil, of Pemex. And I was, in many movements. So they think that I can continue what President López Obrador is doing. The second thing is who I am and what I have done in Mexico City. If they didn't like a scientist and a politic to be a president, they probably don't prefer myself. And also my work in Mexico City. If my job here in Mexico had been bad and people were, against me, but probably I couldn't go, to the next step. And finally, believe it or not, is because I'm a woman. It's now time for women. It's incredibly, it's not only the social movement of young women, and it's also that in Mexico we have already 9 governors and many women participating in politics, so it's not strange. And at some point people see that it's good to have a president, a female president.
Well, we'd like to talk about one of those reasons that you spoke about, which is your role as head of government of Mexico City. Again, a city of over 20 million people, which is very significant. And you were elected by popular vote again in 2018. As head of government, you've taken on many initiatives to address some of the structural issues facing the city. And one of them that we'd like to talk about is, of course, femicide and the issue of women, which is a huge challenge for Mexico. It's a huge challenge for the region in general. But in your role, you've taken a lot of different initiatives to address this issue, to make the city a safer place for women. So can you talk a bit about those initiatives?
Yes, in November 2019, I decided to make an alarm for women. We could say that. And so we developed 11 points for women to be safe in the city. And we have now done more than that. I can tell you some examples. For example, we have 27 centers to attend women that have violence at home. We have passed many laws. One that I like to say in many places is that, when we think violence in the household or in families, what we think is, let's take the woman and her children to a refuge.
Yeah.
How do you say it in English?
Refuge.
Refuge?
Yeah.
So I asked myself, why do you have to take out the women and put it and hide her, right? So now we have a law here in Mexico City that it's the aggressor goes out of the house. So even if the property is not of the women, of the woman, of her, she has the right to stay at home. And the man or the aggressor has preventive measures, or even he goes to jail if the judge decided. So it's a complete different way of thinking. And also we have made 800 kilometers of safe corridors with a lot of light and buttons for help, for the police to come. We have a special number. It's 765 to call for if you have you have problems, if you're a woman, and many other things that. So we don't know if there are more feminicides now than before, because before they were not counted, but we have to take care of that. Yeah.
And I mean, you've dealt with so many other issues as well. One of the biggest ones affecting the entire planet, of course, is climate change. And you're an environmental engineer. As you mentioned, you were also Secretary of Environment. And you were part of the UN panel on climate change in 2007, which won a Nobel Peace Prize. And Mexico City, like all major cities, deals with many issues related to this, such as access to water or pollution, just the general impact of climate change. During your time in office, what have been major initiatives that you've taken up to address these issues that affect everybody?
Okay, we have our own environmental and climate change program for the city. And I can tell you some of the things that we have done. We have planted about 35 million of trees and plants in the city, compared to the last 4 years before I entered the government. It's about 10 times. Second, we have made a lot of investment in electromobility, but for public transportation. So we have the 2 cable cars, the longer cable cars for public transport in the world. One is in Iztapalapa, the west part of the city, and the other one is the north part, and especially for the poor people that lives in the mountains that go to the metro. One is 10 kilometers and the other one is almost 10 kilometers. They moved around 120,000 personas.
120,000.
That's right. And then we have already 500 trolleys in the city. We made a second floor, but not for cars, only for trolleys, 8-kilometer second tier.
So moving to another one of those reasons that you mentioned before, which is, of course, the transformation. The fourth transformation has been the guiding project of your party, Morena. So I think it's interesting if you can tell us a bit about what does the fourth transformation mean, what has it accomplished so far, and for you, what is the vision for continuing this project and what's left?
Okay, we call it fourth transformation because since we are a nation, we have had 3 transformations before. The first one is the independence that began in 1810. The second one was the reform with Benito Juárez. We divided the church from the state, and we have also the French invasion and the US invasion. So 19th century, especially the second half of 19th century was very important for Mexico. And then for many, many years, we have a dictator that was Porfirio Díaz. So the third transformation was the Mexican Revolution, which changed, the government not only for more democracy, but to see the government for the social rights. These 3 transformations were violent. There were wars. And the fourth transformation is pacific because we believe in peace. And what have changed? We, in 2008, in December, we can say that the economic model changed from neoliberalism, that at some point in Mexico it's equal to corruption, and also to give most of the national natural resources to private companies, to a new way of govern that now we call it Mexican humanism. And it's mainly we believe in private investment, we believe in trade, of course, in free trade. We have a trade with the US and Canada, but we believe that the states have to give the rights for the people. What do we think is a right? Education, health, household, or dwelling, pension for all the elders. And we believe that government has, and also we believe in that strategic areas of economy, such as energy, the state has to be part of this, especially electricity, oil, and mainly, and now lithium, that it's going to be very important. It's important, and it's going to be very important in the future. So it's the basic, but we believe also in trade. We believe in private investment, but we believe in wealth for Mexican people. You cannot have private investment measured only by GDP or international investment. You have to measure investment, public and private, in wealth for the people. And that's the big difference with neoliberalism, that believe that everything was going to be solved by the market.
So also with regards to the region, we've seen many significant electoral victories of the left, of progressive forces across Latin America, in Honduras, Bolivia, Brazil, and Colombia. What is the significance of this progressive resurgence for Mexico, and how does Mexico see itself as part of this?
It's something very special what it's happening right now in Latin America. And I think people decided that the old model was bringing inequalities and corruption in many parts. And people want to have a government that look for the people who have less, historically. And that's very important because, in many parts, from my generation, we always think Latin America as the Patria Grande, and so for me, it's something incredible that it's happening. Now we have to give results.
This progressive wave is distinct in the presence of more female leaders, people like Xiomara Castro, Cristina Fernandez, Francia Marquez, and then Mexico, of course, just hosted the Feminist International, which was a gathering of all these female leaders from across the region. How do you see all of this in relation to the rising tide of feminism across the region?
It's obvious that women are, getting more in public life because of the feminist movement, because of the young women that have said, stop violence and stop especially sexual violence. So this is very important. What I think, and I spoke in this international congress, and I said, let's speak about a social feminism. What do I think about it? We women, we have probably the same problems, but there are some women that suffer more. In Mexico City, we made a survey who is more discriminated in Mexico City. And it's because of the color of your skin, it's because if you're indigenous, and it's because if you're women. So if you are, if you're not white, if you're a woman and you're indigenous, you're going to be more discriminated. And it's not the same for a white woman. So we have to think about it. It's not only, the same for everybody.
So Mexico has historic ties with the people of Cuba, and in the last several years, under the leadership of Andrés Manuel, there has been many important advances with regards to economic and medical cooperation. Of course, that the U.S. blockade presents many challenges to this. But for you, what do you see as the major barriers to furthering integration amongst the people of the region, and specifically, of course, with the people of Cuba?
Okay, we are against any kind of, how do you say it in English? Bloqueo?
Blockade.
The blockade. because people suffer from that. It's not just that you're against certain government, but people suffer. And even though this blockade, people of Cuba get, their own path. Medicine in Cuba is incredible compared to many other countries in the world. So Cubans have to decide what is going to happen with Cuba. And people of any other countries are going to decide. That's a principle of foreign policy in Mexico. It's in the Constitution, the sovereignty of any country. And especially, we have ties with Cuba. And right now we have been benefit from Cuban doctors that are coming to Mexico, because in the last decade, medical schools have closed so much that we don't have enough doctors. So we are looking in any country that want to help us to have a good public health system, and the Cuban says, we help you. So we are receiving that help, and we are paying for that service. And we are paying doctors as if any other country have said that. And that benefits Cuba. So, they have to decide what's their future, not anybody else.
And you mentioned the issue of sovereignty. As I'm sure you've seen, we have these conservative politicians in the US that have been making these very provocative statements about military intervention in Mexico under the guise of fighting drug cartels. And this comes after AMLO has nationalized the country's lithium industry, which they're not so happy about. And he's also emphasized the importance of Mexican sovereignty. So what's your position on US interference in Mexico?
I'm against it. As I'm against, intervention in any other country. Why in Mexico? The drug market between Mexico and the U.S., it's because in the U.S. in history, more consumers than in Mexico. So if we want to stop that, is not just violence. It's to talk to young people that drugs make, especially fentanyl, destroy human lives. But it's cooperation. It's not invasion. So you say that? Invasion? Yeah. So it's not violence. We have to work together to stop the consumption and to stop the market of fire guns that come mainly from the U.S. So it's mutual. So we have to work together, not this thing that it's just, I think, propagandistic. But we have to defend Mexico at all points.
So over the past several months, there have been very large and important mobilizations in support of President Andrés Manuel, of the project of Morena, the fourth transformation, in support of the nationalization of lithium. There's now one more year left of AMLO's term as president. Can you maybe just, to finalize this interview, if we can kind of talk a bit about these last few years, Morena being in power, and really, what has this meant for the people of Mexico?
Okay, it meant general pension for elder people. It meant a lot of scholarship for poor people, universal scholarship for high school students that go to public schools. We're going to have a new train in the south of the country, another train that goes from the Pacific to the Atlantic to the Gulf of Mexico. We're going to have several ports. We are going to have a lot of investment in new roads. We have already. We have a new airport. So if you take, you know, the last governments, and this government, we have a lot of public investment. The highest foreign investment in Mexico, and you have at the same time new rights for the people. And that's why people are, you know, with President López Obrador in 70%, is because they see that this new government change and is benefit for everybody. And he fought for Mexico, and he fought for a new way of seeing history, even for our ancient cultures. So Mexico have changed a lot in more than 4 years, I mean, a lot. And the way I see it is that, I mean, people love this change, the majority, of course, and people love their president because he have won the heart of the people, because he's a president that have fought for them for 25 years. I mean, you cannot write the Mexican history the first 25 years, the first quarter of the 21st century without López Obrador. He has changed a lot in Mexico, and with a social movement that you know went with him, but he has been the head of that. So you know, things are changing for good in Mexico, and I think that we have to continue this transformation. We cannot go to the corruption and to the old governments that only did something for privileged people. So we are in peace, we have political peace, we have social peace, we have violence in certain points of the country because of drug cartels, but we have to continue giving rights for the people, and at the same time combating, you know, the drug cartels and every violence that are in Mexico. So it's we're in a good place right now.
Well, Dr. Sheinbaum, we want to thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time.
No, thank you very much for you. Thank you.